Step aside, Unicron. A new big bad has entered the Transformers universe, and its name is Goliant. So the latest issue of Void Rivals has definitively given us the entire origin of the Sacred Ring, Zerta Trion, the Agorian and Zertonians, confirmed the Transformers origins, and most importantly, gives us the origin of Goliant. What's up everyone, James here, and it's been a while since we covered this series. 5 issues of craziness have come out since the last video, so we're playing a bit of catch up here. We have a lot, and I mean a lot to cover, so this will be a massive video. Now, the Void Rivals issues right now are constantly jumping between multiple characters. We have Pythona, Proximus, the Skuxxoid, Darak and Solila separated now, Premier Zalilak, the Quintessons, Hot Rod, and Springer. So I'm going to make this easier for you all to follow and experience, and try to not jump too much between characters and make sense of it all. Let's get into it. But before we do, make sure you hit that like button. First, we're going to start with Pythona and the cobra-la Royal Guard with her. Now, if you are new here and didn't see our coverage of the Cobra Commander series, I'll have a link to it at the end of this video and in the pinned comment below. I'll do the same for any other videos or series I mentioned throughout this video. In short, cobra-la is basically an ancient civilization and kingdom of snake people who only use organic technology. So they hate advanced mechanical technology. In the aftermath of Megatron escaping imprisonment, and after discovering Cobra Commander had kept everything he knew about Megatron and where he came from, Lord Globulus approved of Pythona locating Cybertron because he views Cybertron, a world entirely mechanical in nature, as an antithesis to his kingdom, which is based on organic life. Also, he sees Megatron as a sign of a possible incoming invasion of Earth by the Transformers that will eventually threaten cobra-la. Now, we really didn't get much of Pythona in the Cobra Commander series, so right off the bat, Robert Kirkman gives us more about her. We see Pythona's biggest motivating factor is that she doesn't want to fail Globulus, because she has a nightmare of him berating her for failing her current mission. She wakes up to her crew reporting to her that they tracked Jetfire's energy signature, and it ended back at the small planet where he had encountered Darak and Solila. They more than likely were able to do this because they developed a way to track Transformers, probably tracking the energon in their bodies. So they're using the energy signature left by Jetfire when he arrived on Earth back in the first issue of Transformers. Though his trail ends here on the small planet, they eventually find Darak and Solila's footprints and track them to where they launched their small makeshift ship. One of her troops mentions that though there's a faint energy signature, they can still track it. This is going to lead them into a confrontation with someone that's totally insane. Honor system here, but only those people who haven't read the Void Rivals issue so far. I want you to comment below right now who you think it is. From here, we're going to transition for a moment to my guy, the Skuxxoid. He's in his usual spot in the galaxy where he came upon Darak and Solila. We learn the importance of this place in the galaxy. He's meeting with Bosch to receive payment for the job he had done for him in the last video. Bosch asks him, "Don't you feel exposed being out here?" The Skuxxoid answers, "No, it's a nexus of many transport lanes. The most curious oddities have fallen in my lap in this very spot. Most ships mistake my rockoroid for a mere asteroid." When Bosch mentions paying him, the Skuxxoid responds to pay him or don't pay him. He doesn't care anymore. Remember, the Skuxxoid has basically been depressed ever since he remembered he doesn't have his family anymore, and we still don't know what exactly happened to them. However, here's the weird thing that happens. Later, he's sitting alone, depressed. He suddenly snaps and says to himself, "What am I doing? I have a wife and kids to provide for." Now, we don't know if Kirkman is showing us the Skuxxoid is having issues with his memory, like possibly having dementia or something, or he could be showing us that he's just outright delusional. Now, going to Darak and Springer, they're arriving outside of Agoria. Darak enters the city and eventually meets with Director Erlander, whom we haven't seen since the first issue. One thing I want to point out here is this is our first time seeing what life in Agoria is like. We saw in Zertonia that if you aren't the people living in the great city, you're either starving, homeless, or providing all your food to the government. Whereas here in Agoria, at least from what we can see here, that doesn't seem to be the case. The people seem to be thriving. Alander takes Darak to the capital to meet with his father, Minister Dulin, and we finally get a confrontation between these two. Dulin wastes no time with the pleasantries and immediately demands Darak to tell him where Solila is. This stuns Darak for a moment because it proves his father had a hand in him almost getting killed multiple times, and proves his dad is working with the Zertonians. He calls his father a hypocrite for calling him a traitor for working with the Zertonian when he's been clearly working with them this entire time. Through more of their back and forth, we learn part of what caused the rift between these two is that Darak had chosen to be a pilot instead of being his father's successor. His father admits though he is the best Agorian pilot in history, he doesn't care, because no matter how great he is, he doesn't need another pilot. He needs a successor. He says, "You turned your back on your destiny and chose a lesser path. I need someone to help me carry this burden. We must prevent unity at all costs." Now Darak, after having his vision of the origin of the Sacred Ring, meeting Solila and seeing that Zertonians are no different from Agorians, being in Zertonia and witnessing how badly the people are struggling and suffering there, delivers a great response to his father. He says, "So you think if I was your successor, I'd want to keep pretending the Zertonians are evil creatures hell-bent on our destruction? That I would desire the power of leadership so badly that I turn my back on everything decent and good. They're just like us. They have the same hopes, dreams, and struggles. We should stop fighting and come together. Unity is our future." Dulin replies, "No, son, you have been misled. Unity is the path of destruction. It will tear our civilization asunder and shatter the Sacred Ring until nothing remains. Unity is our very end." When Darak responds that he doesn't understand, his father responds trying to super simplify everything by saying, "Unity brings Goliant. Goliant brings about the end." I'm pretty sure the only other time Darak has heard about Goliant was when he saw the vision of the history of the Sacred Ring and Zerta said the coming of Goliant draws near. So he asks his father what is Goliant, and Dulin only answers, apologizing to him that he regrets not sharing the burden his father passed down to him, a legacy that has been passed down for generations. Their discussion is suddenly interrupted by a soldier reporting to Dulin that a ship is approaching Agoria. In the control room, Dulin assumes it's a new Zertonian weapon and orders for a squadron of jump ships to be scrambled, but Darak makes it clear it's not because, as we saw in Zertonia, they don't have the resources for a new weapon. He eventually convinces his father to just send him out, which he begrudgingly does. Now, before we transition from here to Solila, we're going to check on Premier Zalilak. Remember, this guy has failed time and time again trying to stop Darak and Solila, trying to prevent unity from happening. He failed to keep them in prison, was forced to unleash the prisoner Proximus, who remember is the deadliest warrior in all of Zertonia on them, risking him turning on him, and that failed. Then despite being low on resources, still sent a whole Zertonian squadron on them, and even that still failed to stop them. He even had to go through the shame of admitting his failure of preventing unity to Dulin. So, while feeling like a failure, and now out of ideas, resources, and allies, Zalilak has been forced to kneel before Mistress Vill and her Keepers of Light, asking her for aid. The reason why this is kind of crazy and a big deal is because it shows how desperate he is, because the society at large views the Keepers of Light as zealots. Vill even points out to him that he must be desperate if he's coming to her. When he brings up that their world is on the brink of ruin because he didn't prevent unity, Vill responds to this explaining that he fears unity only because of the sacred texts he was shown. Those same texts, she says, were written by flawed men, full of fear with flawed ideas, who didn't comprehend the forces at work in their world, passing it down for generations. This pisses off Premier Zalilak. He snaps at Vill, telling her he came for guidance, but all she offers is blasphemy. Mistress Vill responds to this by straight up pimp slapping him right on the spot, while saying, "And you will kneel again, and be taught anew, shown the ways of the light of Zerta. You have your sacred texts, but we are the keepers of the light. and light cannot be corrupted. You will learn our ways, and learn that while unity may very well bring about an end, what follows that is a new beginning. She then asks if he accepts, that if he denounces his former ways and accepts the path of the light. Zalilak answers, "My methods have failed and only led me to a path of despair and ruin. If you are willing, I am open to learning your ways." So basically, Zertonia's leadership has joined this fanatical religious group, who we still don't know their true goals. Are they good or are they evil? We're going to finally transition to Solila now. She has been descending further into the Sacred Ring through Springer's abandoned excavation of it. Through her and Handroid's conversation, we learned Springer had abandoned it because it became too dense the further he excavated. So he knew a being of his size wouldn't be able to get much lower. Handroid points out to her that at their current pace, it'll take them 7 weeks to reach the centermost area of the ring. Solila responds that she'll starve to death well before that, but then mentions that she hasn't been hungry at all since Springer used Energon to heal her. This confirms for us that both Agorians and Zertonians don't need food to sustain themselves. Like the Cybertronians, Energon sustains them. Solila jumps further down into the Sacred Ring and lands in front of this corridor. As she walks the corridor, Handroid mentions he's concerned because he can't pick up any readings up ahead, that it's like they're walking into nothing. Solila responds that she's not because she can feel Zerta's light is drawing her forward. At least until she comes across 3 separate corridors and says she feels nothing. She then takes out the green key Mistress Vill gave her, and it leads her to the right corridor. Now we need to return to Darak for a moment because he and Solila are going to cross paths in a moment. You'll see what I mean by that in a second here. Getting ready to launch and meet the ship approaching Agoria, he tells the new handroid he has to revive him as soon as they cross the event horizon. The jump jet launches. Once they cross the event horizon, the handroid gives him the reviver, but Darak doesn't awaken. He finds himself taken into the void. Initially thinking it's going to be another vision because, remember, this is his first time experiencing this. Until he meets Solila, who also has suddenly been taken here as well. After they catch up and after Darak throws shade towards Zerta, asking Solila if her fake Cybertronian god is responsible for them meeting like this, Solila puts him in his place for that. For those of you who've been reading the series or following the videos, you know time and time again, Darak has been making it clear he doesn't believe in Zerta, and there is a big reason why when it comes to the origin of Agorians and Zertonians. That's part of the reason why he is that way, and we'll learn about that by the end of the video. They ask each other about their current status of their journeys. Darak asks Solila if she's found Zerta, and she answers no. Then she asks Darak if he has given the data packet Canela gave to them to the Unifiers in Agoria, and he answers no because it was confiscated when I was brought in, and no one asked about it. When he realizes that's odd no one did, that's when Solila calls him a moron for not realizing that whoever inspected it knew exactly what it was and hid it before anyone else discovered it. I like this a lot and wanted to point it out because it's one of those moments where Solila outsmarts him. And I would say one of the big differences between these two is that Darak is more intelligent than Solila, whereas Solila is definitely the more prestigious warrior and has a more strategic mind than Darak. Darak then reveals to Solila the big conspiracy of their respective people's leaders aware of the fact that they're the same and are colluding to keep their people apart. She snaps at him because that's something so huge that he should have started the conversation with that. But before they can discuss that any further, suddenly they're both taken back to the real world. Darak awakens to his jump jet, almost ramming into the ship that was approaching Agoria, which we see is piloted by Hot Rod, finally making it to the Sacred Ring. Hot Rod takes this as a sign of aggression and starts firing warning shots at Darak, but he eventually stops when Darak communicates over comms that he didn't mean to almost ran into him. Hot Rod responds by apologizing and introducing himself as Hot Rod of Cybertron, which immediately gets Darak's attention. Now remember, Hot Rod was being followed here by the Quintessons. The Quintesson judge is shocked to see what he calls the Ring of Zerta is real. He says the fabled ring of Zerta and cuts himself off and says, "She who will not be named exists. At long last, we Quintessons will have our revenge." I like how the Quintessons have been treating Zerta's name like Voldemort's name in Harry Potter. Wait till we get to the origin of why they hate her, it's so good. In the meantime, this is bad for the Agorians and Zertonians, because the Quintesson judge plans on returning to Quintessa and delivering the news to the Council of Judges. They will likely plan and prepare to return with their forces and invade the Sacred Ring. Now Darak brings Hot Rod to Agoria, and of course, the Agorian soldiers pull their blasters on him because it's a giant robot they've never seen before. Hot Rod introduces himself and explains to Dulin that he is looking for another of his kind who long ago went on a journey to confirm one of their myths that led him here. Dulin insists that if another being like him were wandering Agoria, he would know about it. And at that moment, Springer arrives, and the Autobots unite. Darak reveals to his father that he didn't tell him everything. Now the two coolest Autobots catch up. Hot Rod tells Springer that things were getting worse on Cybertron before he left. Springer responds with what we already know, explains to Hot Rod how he got stuck here. Later, Springer and Hot Rod are helping the Agorian scientists with developing Energon. However, there is a feeling of mistrust because Dulin asks Darak how is he sure he can trust him, and Darak assures him that the Transformers can be trusted and be valuable allies because Springer saved his life more than once and is the one who informed him that the Sacred Ring is an Energon well. After they see how quickly the Agorians are learning everything about Energon, with the information Springer gave them on what Energon is and the Sacred Ring being an Energon well, Hot Rod asks him how this helps them when it comes to Cybertron. Springer answers, in the current state of things, it doesn't, because the distance between Cybertron and the ring is just too great. Also, they need to develop their own system and build the infrastructure to extract and process the Energon from the ring, because our Cybertronian methods will be way too disruptive to their civilization. Once they've done that and have enough resources, then we can establish a trade route between here and Cybertron. However, we need to make sure that the Decepticons never find out about the ring. Hot Rod responds that he's shocked that the myth was actually real, but asks Springer if he ever found Zerta. Springer answers, no, but everything in this world, from the ground beneath our feet to the Energon ports in the Agorians and Zertonians' heads, are all signs of her. Now, I want to point out the huge problem now facing the Sacred Ring that Springer is not realizing or he's just unaware of. The Zertonians and Agorians are at war with each other, and with Darak having had Springer give a data packet to the Zertonians a couple videos ago of everything he knows about Energon because he felt bad for the people suffering there, and we know that the Zertonian scientists are working on it, it's only a matter of time before they figure out as well what Energon is and how to extract it from the ring. When that happens, that will officially put the Zertonians on an even playing field with the Agorians. So at that point, if the war continues, it will escalate, and there is no reason not to believe that the Sacred Ring won't eventually end up just like Cybertron right now, or worse. Going back to Darak, since his conversation with Solila, he has figured out that person who took his belongings that had Canela's data packet. And that person was Director Alander. So he just straight up asks him when they're alone, have you made contact with Canela yet? Alander answers, not here. Your father has eyes and ears everywhere. He takes Darak to a secure room, and Darak wastes no time asking how long he's been working with the Unifiers, and asking in a tone of derision, because he's shocked and angry that a man he's trusted for so long has kept something so major from him. Also, through their interactions in this series so far, it's not crazy to assume that Alander has been more of a father to Darak than Dulin. Alander answers, far longer than you, and I don't appreciate your tone. He goes on to reveal that he only sent a brief signal to Canela, that he's been far too busy to do more than that. When Darak says, I just can't believe you've been working with the Zertonians for so long, Alander responds, does it surprise you that I know the truth? I'm more surprised that so few of us are working toward unity. It's absurd that your father and Zalilak are manipulating us into a conflict to keep us apart. which Darak agrees with. Now, Lander goes on to say to Darak, with him as an ally, he'll be invaluable to the cause since he has access to his father. When Darak doubts he'll be able to do anything because his father hates him, Lander reassures him by saying, "Your father is a relic of the past. There's a bright future ahead of us, and I believe you're that future." I'm telling you guys right now, based on the origin of the Agorians and Zertonians, and something that happens later in the video, I think Darak will bring about a dark future before the bright one. You'll see what I mean by that. Darak asks Lander a very important question. He asks, "You, Canela, and the others, are you not afraid of Goliant?" Lander answers, "I don't know what that is." So the Unifiers have no idea what unity brings about. At that moment, the Agorian soldiers burst into the room with Dulin, who says, "I expect this from a coward like Lander, but my son, a traitor? I didn't think I'd live to experience such shame." Seize them. Darak and Lander get stunned and taken out. Going back to Solila, this is where we're going to get more of an expansion to Transformers lore. She hits a dead end, and Handroid suggests using the key again, but the floor opens up beneath them before she can, and they fall into the pitch black darkness. Now, some time passes and Handroid points out that they've been falling for a while, but Solila mentions they could hit bottom at any moment, that she won't die because that isn't Zerta's way, that Zerta would not lead her this far just to die now. Which shows us, and we've seen this time and time again throughout the series, Solila has a lot of faith in Zerta, just as much as Mistress Vill and the Keepers of Light. So the question is, what did she experience that made her call them zealots and leave them? That's why I'm leaning towards Zalilak being a part of them now, a very, very bad thing. I won't be surprised if we find out that Mistress Vill has some very evil machinations of her own. Eventually, Solila is surrounded by a green aura that slows her down and allows her to hit the ground. She pulls out the green key and it brightens and lights her path. She follows the key until she spots a small green light in the distance. The key glows brighter as she approaches. She sees this green light is a keyhole perfectly sized for her key. She places it in and the key activates this huge glowing green spear. It speaks to her and says, "I am Vector Theta. Before the sacred ring was, I was. Who reactivates me?" This is cool, and here's why. For those of you who might be confused as to what this is, Vector Theta is a supercomputer. It's being revealed to us as living within the heart of the sacred ring. Just like its predecessor, Vector Sigma, is also a supercomputer that lives within the heart of Cybertron. Vector Sigma is a concept that first appeared in the G1 cartoon episode Keys to Vector Sigma, where it was described as a mega computer that had unknown origins, that Alpha Trion was basically the keeper of. It had the ability to bring Transformers to life. Megatron stole the key from Alpha Trion and had used it to create the Stunticons. Optimus Prime responded by using it to create the Aerial Bots. Fun fact, that cryptid line Vector Theta said to Solila, "Before the sacred ring was, I was," that's basically the same thing Vector Sigma said when it was activated. "Before Cybertron was, I was." Now, we don't find out if Vector Theta has any special abilities like Vector Sigma, because the conversation between it and Solila is short. After Solila announces who she is, Vector Theta asks why she reactivated it, and Solila answers, "I was told the key would lead me to Zerta Trion." Vector Theta responds, "If you want to locate Zerta Trion, continue on your path. She awaits you at the end of it." When Solila says that was less than helpful, Vector Theta is like, "I've given you everything you asked, now beat it, kid." It doesn't actually say that last part, it just says, "Be gone." Solila takes the key and continues her journey. She eventually smacks her head against the wall. She climbs it and continues to walk until she reaches a precipice's edge. Just when she's about to jump off, she sees a giant face. It awakens and says, "I still function." Solila has finally found Zerta Trion. I like how Zerta's first words are a nice callback to Megatron's line in Transformers the movie. Now, I have to apologize to you guys, but before we get into the big, crazy, and awesome origin of Goliant and Zerta Trion, we have to quickly check on Proximus and then return to Pythona. I promise it won't be long, but that insane confrontation with Pythona I mentioned earlier is going to happen here. In Zertonia, Ultum and Proximus are together. Remember, in the last video, Ultum had come across Proximus and he joined him. Ultum asks him how much longer he's going to take, and Proximus answers not long. Then literally right after that, Ultum asks, how about now? We see that Proximus is restoring his arm and leg after losing them to Springer. He says, Ultum, I have to hurry before our presence is detected, but you're breaking my concentration and slowing me down. If you don't stop asking me for updates, I may just kill you. I'm finding you extremely annoying. Proximus is a dick, and Ultum is an annoying kid. This is a great pairing Kirkman has created here. Heading back to Pythona and the cobra-la Royal Guard, while following the energy signature of Solila and Darak's makeshift ship, they lose the signal. One of the Royal Guard, named Vipra, who's piloting the creature they're on called a Leviathan, reports to her that they lost the signal due to some cosmic debris they collided with that's lodged near the eye of the creature that's emitting radiation interfering with their senses. And the other troops, Bola and Gracula, are currently removing it. We go to them outside the Leviathan. Now they're able to breathe in space because of their second skin, which is their armor that warms their bodies and gives them oxygen. When Gracula grabs the cosmic debris, which seems to be this green crystal, she gets blasted by the energy emitted by it and it sends her flying into space. And so Bola grabs her. As of right now, we don't know what this green crystal is, but it's definitely affected Gracula, because later when Pythona asks her how she's doing, Gracula answers that she has no lasting injuries and that she was more so startled by the incident. However, she also says, I can't help but feel something's off. I can feel it in my armor waves, pulses traveling through it. Whatever it was, my armor protected me, but it did so at great cost. Pythona looks closer at her armor and notices a series of bumps growing on her shoulder. She orders Acronis to keep an eye on Gracula and report to her if the bumps on her spread further. At that moment, the Leviathan rocks and its movement stops. We see it has fallen into the clutches of the Skuxxoid's Rockeroid. The Skuxxoid brings the Leviathan on his ship, and he's in awe of finding such a huge organic creature. But when he gets closer to inspect it, Pythona and the Royal Guard come slicing out of it, ambushing him. Here's the crazy thing we already know. The Skuxxoid is somewhat capable in a fight based on his short confrontation with Solila and Darak and the mission that he successfully achieved for Bosch. However, this is the cobra-la Royal Guard. They're all very capable warriors. Pythona launches this multi-headed snake at him, which the Skuxxoid manages to take out. But that was meant to be a distraction, so Acronis could land the killing blow. However, the Skuxxoid was fast enough to take out the snakes and dodge Acronis' attack at the same time. He grips Acronis and shoots him right in the chest. Like, damn, son. Pythona orders the rest of the guard to take care of Acronis because she wants the ones with the Skuxxoid. Pythona moves fast, but the Skuxxoid shows he can match her speed. He blocks her attack and even compliments her on her speed. Pythona says, "You do not know the power of cobra-la, but soon you will." She manages to land a blow on the Skuxxoid, slicing his face with her acid-ridden claws. The Skuxxoid says that it burns and it will never heal. He uses one of the Rockeroid's claws inside the hangar to catch her off guard and knock her back. The rest of the Royal Guard charge toward him, and he takes them all on, handling it well until he says, "You feeble creatures can't hurt me." His overconfidence is his downfall, because that's when Gracula gets the drop on him and slices him in freaking half. Like, holy hell. Down goes the Skuxxoid. Pythona congratulates her on the kill, But Gracula points out they won, but not without sacrifice, because Acronis, without his second skin, will not be able to heal from his injuries. Vipra offers to stay with him as he passes, but Pythona says no because they don't know what other dangers lurk on the ship, and they have to leave at once. Vipra then suggests they take him with them then, because he may recover. Pythona points out that without his second skin, he'll either freeze in space or burn by the radiation of the sun. He's a lost cause. She says, if you pity your fallen brother, show mercy and end his life. Now, Vipra doesn't end his life, because after they depart, we see Acronis move his finger. Though the Skuxxoid was clearly sliced in half and looks dead, I don't think he's dead, and here's why. In the G1 cartoon, the only information we get about the Skuxxoids as a race is that they're reptilian, obviously intelligent, and act like mercenaries, selling their services to the highest bidder. We haven't gotten nothing more than that throughout the years because they really haven't been used all that much in any of the other Transformer continuities. This gives Kirkman total freedom to give the Skuxxoid abilities we've never seen before. I think one of those abilities will be regeneration. Since he's reptilian, like some reptiles can regenerate their tails, I think the Skuxxoid will be able to regenerate the lower half of his body. I think that we'll see, maybe in the next issue, that he can regenerate, and how fast he regenerates is dependent upon the injury that occurs to him. Like losing the entire lower half of your body probably takes some time to heal. Comment below what you all think. Now let's finally go to Solila and what we've all been waiting for. I am so hyped for this part. Okay, she says to Zerta, "At long last I have found you. I have been on a path to you for most of my life. Your will is my command." Zerta replies, "I know you, my child, Solila. Communicate, so difficult in my current state. I know a better way." She connects with Solila's mind eye and tells her the origin of the sacred ring. She says, "You are on a path, one of treachery and danger. To survive this path, you must know what lies ahead and what came before. My story began so long ago, on Cybertron. Born as slaves, my companion, A3 and I, led a rebellion against our oppressors. I was known as Beta then. Cybertron was under the thrall of the vile Quintessons, a species fueled by hate. They controlled much of the quadrant in a time that would eventually be known as the Age of Wrath. Over time, our trials changed us. We became Alpha and Zerta, both of us Trions, a title worthy of our acquired wisdom. Together we led our people to victory, or so we thought. Goliant. He was the Quintessons' ultimate weapon, their final resort, their greatest creation, and our end. With Goliant's arrival imminent, we knew the tide of the war would turn back in the Quintessons' favor. I abandoned my people and ventured out alone to lure him away, ensuring Cybertron's future. I was able to lead him to a distant star, which he would consume over a millennia, an action that would doom your distant ancestors. While he feasted, I plotted. I knew once he'd consumed the star, he'd be more powerful than ever. I influenced your ancestors, inspiring them to build a new means of survival as the dying star took their home planets with it, the sacred ring. It served a dual purpose as Goliant's prison. As he drained the final shards of energy from your dying star, he became entangled in the black hole that emerged. I clouded his mind, dividing his essence and separating it to keep him in a weakened state. I inspired the construction of the sacred ring to draw power from the black hole to generate energon, to solve the problems of my home world. But I was injured in my confrontation with Goliant, leaving me unable to return home, stranded here. I saw refuge deep within the sacred ring. I was able to influence your actions from afar, some more than others. Zertonians were more receptive to my call, taking my name to honor me. The Agorians went their own way, still harboring their portion of the essence of Goliant. Your sacred ring is essentially a sister planet to Cybertron, built with my influence, with the aid of its own vector intelligence. It draws abundant energy from the black hole and Goliant within, while Cybertron is a husk of what it once was in its golden age. However, your time of abundance is coming to an end. Goliant is drained. The plan has worked, but it is nearing its final stage: unity. Your people were divided to separate the essence, to maintain Goliant's slumber. His essence must now be unified. Zertonians and Agorians must unite to bring this about. We must release Goliant from his prison, in his most weakened state. Only then can he be destroyed. If he is not destroyed, it is only a matter of time before he begins to regain his strength and awaken on his own. It must be now. This is the sacred charge I now bestow on you, Solila. You have been given the light of my wisdom. It is your duty to now spread it to your people, all your people. Unite them. Solila replies, I accept this mission gladly, although I fear, Great Zerta, that I lack the power to complete this task. Zerta responds, I will give you the power. Oh my god. Okay, so much to unpack here. First off, I was wrong theorizing the being that awakened in the Sacred Ring when Solila and Darak connected was Unicron. So was everyone else who thought it was Zerta. Second, this finally confirms my long-standing theory that Skybound is going with the G1 cartoon's Transformers origins. That was revealed in the episodes that I've brought up multiple times on the channel now: Five Faces of Darkness Part 4 and Forever is a Long Time Coming, where the Quintessons created the Transformers and enslaved them until A3, aka Alpha Trion, led a rebellion against them. However, the Quintessons being the creators of the Transformers in the Energon universe, I bet will end up not being entirely true, and we'll eventually learn that Primus is the true creator of the Transformers. We know he exists because he's been mentioned a few times in the Transformers series. I mentioned this all the way back in my issue 3 video of Void Rivals, where we had met the Quintesson scientists who mentioned the Age of Wrath. In the Transformer books, Transformers Exodus, Retribution, and the Covenant of Primus, we learned that the Age of Wrath came about after the Great Cataclysm, a devastating event in Cybertron's early history that damaged Cybertron so much that it ended the Age of Evolution, disrupting the development of the Cybertronian race. They ended up living in a feudal society ruled by kings and warlords. Eventually, the Quintessons, who were created by one of the 13 primes, Quintus Prime, discovered Cybertron. They presented themselves as saviors, revealing the secret of the transformation cog, allowing Cybertronians to transform. This advanced Cybertronian society, along with many other things they introduced and implemented, but the entire time, the Quintessons secretly planned to subjugate and enslave them. Sentinel Prime led a rebellion against the Quintessons, with D16, aka Megatron, fighting on the front lines, and Orion Pax, aka Optimus Prime, gathering forces. Together, they defeated the Quintessons and ended the Age of Wrath. I think this will mostly be the same case in the Energon universe. It will be a mixture of the G1 cartoon's Transformers origins and the Transformer books. This is my breakdown of what we've gotten so far and my theory of what will be revealed later. The Quintessons were created by one of the 13 primes. During the Age of Wrath, they took over Cybertron and wiped out the Cybertronians living there. They used the Well of Sparks to create their own Transformer slaves. Alpha and Zerta Trion were part of those early creations and eventually led their rebellion against them. Optimus Prime's younger self, Orion Pax, fought alongside them. Also, based on the preview images for the next Transformers issue, where we'll get Megatron's origin, it seems like he was forced to be a gladiator by the Quintessons. So more than likely, he was also part of that rebellion as well. If Skybound does this, or a version of it, it would establish the brotherhood Optimus and Megatron once had, and most importantly, perfectly connect and thread together the Transformers, the Quintessons, Agorians, and Zertonians, essentially making them all children of Primus. Comment below what you all think about this. I know it's a lot to take in right now. The final thing I want to mention here that we have learned in Zerta Trion's origins that I have to point out that was such a genius move by Kirkman is that Zerta Trion is based on an existing Transformers character. Because Zerta Trion's original identity, Beta, is from Forever Is a Long Time Coming. She was A3's partner and helped him lead the rebellion that eventually freed Cybertron from the Quintessons. Now let's transition back to Darak, who's being berated by his father Dulin for working with the Unifiers, who he calls a group of traitors who knows nothing of the catastrophe Unity will bring about. That even if he has to kill Darak to prevent Unity, he's willing to do it. Darak is like, so that's it, we've gotten to the point where you're threatening to kill me? His father explains that he's done everything to steer him away from this path. He says, you risk the demise of all who live and all who will live. What would you have me do? Seeing how serious his father is, Darak asks him to talk more about this. Dulin reluctantly agrees, and when he sends the guards away and he and Darak are alone, he says, before I begin, you need to understand, every word I speak is the truth. It is a truth that binds us all. It is not to be doubted, ever. This is what I meant when I said Darak might bring about a dark future before a bright one. I think the Agorians have their own version of the origin of the Sacred Ring that may be the same as the Zertonians' sacred text. Darak is going to take that as the truth and prevent unity, while Solila is going to continue to try to bring it about, and this will lead to them coming into conflict with each other again. Dulin may even die at some point, and Darak will become the successor and try to honor his father by taking this burden of preventing unity, ensuring the war between Agorians and Zertonians continues. That would make that speech he gave his father earlier about not turning away from doing what's good and decent even more tragic. Next, we're going to do a few quick check-ins with different characters. First, checking in on Hot Rod and Springer catching up. We learned through their conversation that the Agorians are already close to completing the construction of the Energon well, and barely needed their help. Second, in space, Pythona and the cobra-la Royal Guard come across the Quintesson's cruiser returning to Quintessa. Pythona, noticing the cruiser's moving very fast, is curious to see where it's headed, so she orders Vipra to follow it. Man, if we get a cobra-la and Quintesson team up, that would be insane. Third, we go to Proximus, completely dominating the Zertonian unit. The reason why they're here is because Proximus agreed to help Ultum search the database in the Citadel for his mother, but they ended up being discovered. Proximus continues to just annihilate platoon after platoon of Zertonian soldiers that are being thrown at him. The funny thing here is, as Proximus is being dogpiled, he says to Ultum, "You just going to watch?" And Ultum replies, "Sorry sir, I'm not a very good fighter." Proximus stabs his spear into the ground and unleashes a blast of energy that takes out the remaining Zertonian troops. Proximus realizes something isn't right, because Zalilak would never allow him to escape, so he wouldn't send just 3 platoons to stop him. He grabs one of the Zertonian troops and asks him, "Where's Zalilak?" The troop answers, "I don't know. Nobody does. He disappeared months ago." That is our final destination. We go to Premier Zalilak and the Caverns of Ra, undergoing the Keepers of Light trials, with Mistress Vill watching over him. She says if he survives, he will emerge forever changed, a Lord of Zerta's light, possibly even the first true chosen. That is the end of the video. We're finally all caught up on Void Rivals. My god, this video was long. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Comment below your thoughts and subscribe to the channel. Other than that, have an awesome day, and always remember every day to go beyond.